really matters? That might be the most important question you can ask. So let's talk about it. Welcome to What Really Matters podcast, Everyday Spirituality with Karen Wyatt. Thanks for joining me here again for another episode. Last week, I started a discussion about success, and I quoted from some studies that have been done around the idea of success, but I wanted to follow it up today because there's a much deeper discussion to have, and I didn't want to just end with what we talked about last week because primarily the studies that I was quoting from that have been done have to deal with material success and achievement and accomplishment. And the fact is that type of success is success that's measured by the ego. It's measured by our lower consciousness. And it is how this world we live in measures success and thinks of success. And we are part of this world, and therefore it is important for us to think about what we accomplish, what our goals are, how we're moving forward toward our goals. But it's not the only thing, and it's not the only aspect of success. If we define success as accomplishing a goal, there are other types of goals that we can have in our lives, and hopefully we have spiritual goals and goals of moving toward higher consciousness. At least that's what this podcast is all about, talking about those ideas. And so I didn't want to leave it with just this lower consciousness level of success, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about how we can expand on the idea of accomplishing our goals, of finding our purpose, of living a life of meaning, and a life that has value and worth in terms that transcend the physical realm that we're in, that transcend the material. Because one thing that I've learned so far, if our focus is on material success and attaining goals in the material world, and that's our sole focus, we will often be disappointed and feel defeated in life. We will feel like we've failed and that we could have done so much more. We didn't accomplish what we could have done in our lives. In fact, I've seen many people at the end of life who have regrets sometimes that they didn't do as much with their lives as they wish they could have. But the fact is, when we expand our focus and our concept of what a successful, meaningful life is to include higher consciousness and to include deeper, broader, bigger spiritual goals as well, oftentimes we will find that whatever we did accomplish in the material world was just right or perfect because it all fits in with this grander purpose and this grander scheme of things that we've been part of. Sometimes failure and frustration and disappointment are actually part of our journey toward higher consciousness because we learn so much from those downturns. We learn from all the times when things didn't go the way we wanted them to, and we had to regroup, we had to reevaluate everything, maybe change our path, maybe learn something new, maybe stop what we were doing and start all over again. Those have all been pivotal times in our spiritual growth, whether we recognized it in the moment or not. So all the times when we thought we weren't doing well, those were actually times when we were learning much deeper lessons and perhaps confronting our own shadows or healing old wounds or simply learning a new perspective on life. So while all of those downturns may seem like they lack success, they were failures, we were not successful during those times, in terms of our spiritual growth and our growth in higher consciousness, none of those times were actually failures. They were all contributors toward our growth, and sometimes pivotal, very important contributors to our growth. As we look at this expanded view of what quote unquote success is, it's important for us to understand the perspective of the ego in our lives, our own egos, and how they view what happens to us, and the perspective of the higher self. And I've talked about this quite a lot in previous episodes, which you can go back and listen to. But I wanted to bring it up again because it's always relevant in every situation. We always have the presence of ego, the influence of ego, and the lens of ego in which we look at what's happening to us. But hopefully we're also developing and expanding the perspective from higher consciousness, which is completely different than ego, which can see so far beyond what ego can see and can really help us find peace and equanimity with whatever is happening in the moment and wherever we are, whatever our history has been, however things have gone. Through the lens of our higher consciousness, we can learn to embrace and accept and just be comfortable with where we are and who we are in each and every moment, even while we still have the intention of wanting to continue to grow, of wanting to learn more, of wanting to continue to move forward and expand, particularly in our capacity for love. So we can be content with where we've been and where we are, and at the same time, still feel within us the impetus toward greater growth. And that's, in a way, this paradox, the two truths that we're holding at all times, is that we're comfortable in the moment being where we are, and yet we're always open and ready for any possibility that could help us grow. And again, sometimes growth means we go in a direction that feels backwards or feels like we're going downhill. And that is always part of the growth experience. It's not linear. It's not always forward. It's not always up. It is very tangled and twisted and full of detours and dead ends and many, many different types of experiences that all weave together to make this tapestry of our lives. In my book, The Journey from Ego to Soul, I talk a lot about the detours that we can face as we're working on our spiritual journey in order to emphasize this fact that it is not going to be smooth sailing. You are not just going to wake up one day with higher awareness and the light sparkling around you and suddenly be a new person. It's a process. It takes a lot of work. And there will be many, many times that feel discouraging and feel hopeless, even like, I don't think I'm getting it. I don't think I'm going anywhere. I think I've gone backwards. And during those times, if someone were to ask you, what makes your life successful, you may have the very strong feeling that you're not successful at all, that you've failed at everything that you've tried and you haven't gotten anywhere. That's sometimes a very prevalent feeling when you're on the spiritual path. And that's because that's the message the ego is giving you. Wait a minute. If you had only focused on studying this and investing your money here and working in a more lucrative business, you would be financially successful right now and you'd feel great about your life. But the fact is, that's the ego's perception of things from the ego's lower consciousness view, and it's very limited. So our goal here today is to talk about transcending the ego, a more transcendent view of where you're headed, what you're accomplishing in life, how you're meeting your spiritual goals, and how to embrace your life just as it is and how to feel successful in the life that you have right now, whatever that is. So before we go any further, I want to read to you a little bit from The Journey from Ego to Soul. And this is a portion on the ego and versus higher consciousness and how each of them behaves, because the ego can be tricky And it's important to be able to recognize when the messages you're hearing in your head are coming from ego or when they're coming from your higher consciousness. So I'll read this to you, and I wanted to emphasize again, I use the word soul because that's a comfortable word for me to use, but I'm referring to our higher selves or higher consciousness. And you might be more comfortable with that term. So I'm going to just read a couple of paragraphs here from The Journey from Ego to Soul. For the purpose of this journey, you must know who is in the driver's seat of your life, ego or soul. According to Ram Dass, the ego can masquerade as anything, even emptiness. In other words, the ego is capable of imitating the soul and creating a pseudo-spiritual experience that can mislead us. You must get to know the workings of your own ego so that you can differentiate it from soul. Even many spiritual masters have admitted to being tricked by the ego at times during their development. So take this warning seriously. Here are some characteristic behaviors of the ego to watch out for in general. The ego is likely to measure, analyze, compare, criticize, judge, and argue. And I'll take a pause from reading to just say, think about that in your own life. When you're looking at success, the ego, our modern society, constantly measures in numerical terms what success is. How much money did you make? How much did you save? What have you been able to purchase? What do you own? How big is your house? What's the square footage? How many cars do you own? Measuring constantly in numerical figures the value of success, analyzing, comparing. How often do we get tripped up because we make comparisons with other people who it seems like are doing the same work we are, and yet appear to be in the terms of the ego, more successful than we are, and trying to understand that and the jealousy that comes up over those comparisons. We're also likely to criticize other people who we think are not doing what they should be doing to be successful, but especially to criticize ourselves, to feel very judgmental toward ourselves for not doing something more to become materially successful in the world. And so I'll go on with the reading again. Meanwhile, the soul tends to be accepting and tolerant, even while holding firm to values and principles. The soul craves connection and looks for areas of agreement while also maintaining balance. The ego favors rules, productivity, numbers, as I said before, fairness, and doing, while the soul recognizes a higher purpose, mystery, timelessness, emptiness, and being. The ego may spend a great deal of time in the past, trying to figure out who to blame when things have gone wrong, while the soul sees that everything is perfect just as it is. The ego also projects fear into the future, worrying incessantly over things that cannot be known. But the soul is calmly unconcerned with what has not yet happened. The ego complains about how unfairly it has been treated, while the soul recognizes that life may appear to be unfair from the garden perspective, but things look entirely different from the galaxy view or higher consciousness, where the goal is to achieve the greatest good for all. So I'll stop reading there, but again, that's from the book, The Journey from Ego to Soul. And I like thinking about that idea that overall for our higher selves, higher consciousness, the goal is to achieve the greatest good for all of us, for all, because we're all one and we're all connected. And so when we look at life from that goal, we become much more willing to be flexible, to adapt to changes, to even accept downturns and to even maybe give up some of what we had hoped to achieve or accomplish, some of what we hope to own, because it simply doesn't matter very much anymore when we're trying to work toward the best for all of creation, and we're trying to work for what benefits everyone. And to sum that up in my terms, I think of that as love when we're trying to think of how do we bring more love into the world. If I buy another sports car, will that bring more love into the world? Maybe, because maybe the person I buy it from really needs money and it will help them and their family. And maybe my purchase will be the perfect thing that will help that person move forward in their lives. But if I'm buying the sports car only out of vanity and because my ego really wants one more symbol of being successful and important, that motivation is fairly tainted. And so it may not bring more love into the world necessarily. So we can live our lives at any level of material accomplishment and still have higher spiritual values around it if we're constantly aware of what is in the best interest of the whole, what is the best way to bring love into the world. So when we are living from this higher consciousness point of view, it doesn't matter very much how much we own or how much we have. It matters more how we are inside of ourselves, what we carry within us. How have we been able to heal some of our wounds? What kind of vessel are we for love and compassion toward other people? Those are higher values, and those are things that actually do make our lives, quote unquote, successful in the world, because we're actually making a contribution through love that can benefit everyone. So I know I'm talking kind of theoretically and esoterically and out there, but in reality, we do live in a material world. We have to pay the rent. We have to buy food to put it on the table. We have to pay for our utilities and our clothing and our very survival. So I realize we cannot live in a world where we only talk about higher consciousness values and love and how we manifest love in the world. We have to also be able to function in this ego-based, success-oriented world. So that means, in a way, we are on a dual purpose journey. And I've talked about this sometimes as having an inner purpose and an outer purpose. And our outer purpose is our survival in this material world and the things that we do, the jobs we get, the education we receive in order to do the best job we can to survive as physical beings in this world. And our inner purpose is the work we do toward our spiritual growth and how we look within ourselves, how we accept and explore our old wounds and our shadow so that we're constantly healing that, and how we're expanding our perspective of life and the world and our capacity for love. That's our inner purpose. And in this process, we have to learn how to hold both of those, our inner work and our outer work, in order to continue to grow and to survive in this life. So there's nothing wrong with focusing on our material success because that's part of our outer purpose. It's not wrong at all, and I don't mean to sound like I'm condemning that. It's essential in a way for us to survive. But it's most beneficial if we also have a perspective of our inner purpose, of something higher and greater, so that we can keep everything in balance. And so we don't get lost in despair and discouragement when we do have downturns and when we do have what we think of as failures and mistakes, when things don't go the way we wish they would materially in our lives, so that we have a higher perspective on that and we can be more accepting and more tolerant, less self-critical and self-judging about some of the disappointments that we've experienced in life, some of our lack of success, so that we have this bigger, broader definition of what success is. And we may be able then to look at our lives as a whole, inner and outer purpose combined, and recognize like, wow, I didn't do so well in the job market. I had to change my career multiple times. I didn't accumulate the wealth I had hoped I would. And yet I had all these amazing learning experiences that helped me grow spiritually. And here I am now with the ability to see from a higher consciousness, from the galaxy view, the ability to see something more and something far beyond just the physical material concerns of this physical life on earth. When we can see all of that in one picture and hold all of it, the inner and the outer, the higher consciousness and the lower consciousness, the soul and the ego, when we can hold all of it together, that's when we have a sense of wholeness in our lives, of being whole, being a whole person. And also a sense of perhaps having found what we've always been looking for, and recognizing that we've always had it in a way, the success that we're desiring so much, we've actually already had within us as part of our inner purpose. And so it can help us live more comfortably in the material world, be more comfortable with where we are and where we're situated when we have this higher view of what success is and what our purpose is. And there's a Rumi quote that I really love that says, "You wander from room to room, searching for the diamond necklace that is already around your neck." And so that's how I've come to view the search for success in my own life, as a sort of wandering here and there from room to room, always looking for something, always searching for something more and feeling a need for something more, when in fact, I already have within me, within my inner purpose, the diamond necklace that I desire. I already have this higher purpose. I already have deeper meaning. I already have this incredible value and worth within me that I keep looking for outside of me. So this verse is such a good reminder to stop for a moment and pause and think about, what is the diamond necklace that's already around my neck? What is already a part of me that's already here? That is, I already contain it within me. I already hold it in my heart. I don't have to keep searching. I do need to keep taking care of the material realm and of all of my physical needs. So I do need to keep working. I do need to have an income. I do need to take care of my family. I need to do all of those, but I can do them with greater contentment when I'm aware that I already contain the gems within me of love and compassion. They're already there. I already know this. I don't have to search for that. And when I can operate with that knowing in mind, then I live in a place where I can always feel that I am successful in what I'm doing. I'm successful. I can see it through the eyes of my higher consciousness and value my own success without looking at how the world looks at success, and without being defeated and beaten down by how the world looks at success. So I will tell you just a personal, practical story about this, because I am a podcaster now on this second career of my life. In my initial career as a doctor, I was a doctor who worked primarily for nonprofit organizations, and I made fairly small salaries in those positions. So I never really achieved the kind of material wealth that a lot of other doctors did, but I didn't care. That wasn't part of what was important to me. And now that I'm on my second career and I'm writing books and trying to sell them, I'm doing a podcast, once again, I don't have what the world would consider success. I don't have material success. I don't have money pouring in that helps me buy all sorts of things. And yet, what I have within me is this wealth of love and a certain amount of wisdom that it is my privilege to share. And I mean, oftentimes I'm not sharing wisdom, I'm sharing questions I have about spiritual growth and wisdom that I have yet to gather and yet to learn. But on this new path of mine, this second career, I cannot measure it in terms of any sort of success through the world's eyes, or I would quit. I wouldn't do it if I used only the eyes of lower consciousness to evaluate what I do. But using higher consciousness to look at this work, I see it as for the good of all, and sharing whatever I have learned and what comes through me to share with others in hopes that it will be helpful or make life better for someone else. And for me at this point in my life, because I have already taken care of those physical needs for myself, I'm already okay in terms of the material and physical needs. I don't need to focus on those right now. And I can be in this space of giving from higher consciousness. So that for me is where I'm at personally. I hope that makes sense to you. And I hope you find it valuable to talk about this. I hope that you can look differently at your own success in the world and see just how successful you are in your life and appreciate your life and embrace it and celebrate this huge, big picture of success that you have accomplished with everything that you do. And love yourself, love your journey, and be grateful for who you are, and be grateful for the diamond necklace that already hangs around your neck. You already have it. You already carry it within you. And may you, as I remind you at the end of each one of these conversations, may you love your life. May you love everything about your life just as it is and embrace it and find a way to be grateful for what you have and who you are. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.